guys, today we will be putting in a clutch in the furs. If I have lift access, it's gonna make this job a whole lot easier. This is going to be the second clutch I install in this car and like the 20th time I've taken this trans down. Yeah, it's gonna be a pretty easy job for me. I've done this a lot. I've got it down pat as to where I can do it very quickly. So yeah, we're gonna be putting that clutch in today. I have everything I need in here. Got all my oils and stuff, gear oil for the trans and the diff. I have an ACT street clutch right here. I'll show you a little bit better later. I would do an oil change on the car as well. But yeah, guys, let's get started. What's up, guys? This is what we have here. We have our oil and filter. We have our ACT street clutch. This is .4 brake fluid. I'll be using this to replace the clutch fluid. I'll be bleeding the clutch. We have our gear oil for the differential and transmission, and of course grease for the input shaft. First, what I'm going to do is work up top. I'm going to disconnect the negative battery terminal. I'm also going to remove this ground, disconnect these two up here, and since you're up here, go ahead and get the two trans bolts that are visible from up here that are a lot easier to get from up here. You're also going to want to just remove these two bolts to the slave cylinder and move that aside. Oh, let's get started. All right, guys, so I forgot to mention, of course, you're gonna have to disconnect the starter from up here, but we will remove it from down below. But yeah, so far I disconnected the negative battery terminal. I removed this wire that went here. I disconnected these two connectors. Remember to save your bolts. These two bolts are for the slave cylinder. I have that moved aside. Right, now I just need to disconnect the starter, remove the two bolts to the trans that are up above. Of course, I loosened my oil filter, remove my oil cap. Okay, yeah, after we're done here, we're gonna move to the interior. All right, guys, I just wanted to show you, be mindful. This longer bolt, this is one of the starter bolts. These are the regular bell housing mountain bolts. So just be mindful that the starter bolts are longer. All right, guys, moving on to the interior, you're gonna start by removing your e-brake boot. You grab that and slide that out the way, and then you're also gonna remove your shift knob and your shifter boot. Of course, disconnect the connectors to your traction buttons, and you're gonna want to remove the tray in front of the shifter as well that just pulls out, and then you want to access those two bolts in front of it and the two bolts in your center console. Once you have those full bolts removed, you should be able to get your center console out the way. You want to disconnect those side panels as well and disconnect the cable for the 12-volt socket. Once you have that out the way, you're going to have some foam and a bracket to remove. That bracket's for the center console, and then a dust cover around the shifter. You want to remove all those items, and you should be left with the shifter lever and your reverse lockout plate. You're going to want to remove your reverse lockout plate, and to remove the lever, there might be a dust cover you're gonna have to remove in order to access the cotter pin. So once you access that cotter pin, you pull that cotter pin out, you're gonna take the washer off, and you can remove your lever from your shift lever from the linkage. And once you have that, you're pretty much done with the interior, and you can go ahead and lift your vehicle and work from underneath now. Alright, guys, so we got the car in the air. I went ahead and took my wheels off because I want to adjust my parking brake. I also want to rebalance all four wheels. Right now I also just went around and checked my brake pads because I heard them squealing, but they're all good. Just have spacers on this car. I believe these are 20 and the rears are 25. I'm not 100% sure. But yeah, first what I'm going to do, I'm going to drain the oil. I'm also going to remove this. I will be removing this front pipe. This is the stock front pipe. What else? Yep, just gonna be draining the oil, removing this panel, removing the front pipe, and we'll start with that. All right, guys, I now have the exhaust off. I drained the oil already and tightened the plug back. Yep, exhaust is off. You just have the bolt here, 2 nuts here, a bolt here in the center, and then the 2 here. Yeah, kind of get a pry bar or something, push this back, pull it down, get that out the way. Next, we are going to remove these bolts to the drive shaft from the back. We have these 2 mounting bolts to the drive shaft. These are going to be last. Let's see. Once we have that drive shaft off, we will start removing the mounting bolts, like these 2 bolts up here that mount for the transmission shifter, and then we have these 4 bolts for the transmission, and then we have these bolts around the transmission bell housing, and of course the starter. And yeah, let's get started. So I have the drive shaft off, you guys. That wasn't too hard. I already started taking some of the bolts off to the trans. What I forgot to do is I need to drain it. To drain it, you're gonna have to remove this one first, which is the fill. Remove the fill first, and then remove the drain. If not, it's not gonna drain all. I'm going to be draining the diff as well. Same with this one. Remove the fill, then remove the drain. Drain those out. You can put those back, and then we're just gonna remove these bolts, and we're gonna remove the starter, leave it, push it out the way, and we're gonna take this out. All right, I have drained the oil from the trans. I left the filler plug off. I just need to torque this one down. I decided not to drain the diff because I've done it recently, so it's still pretty good. But yeah, let's get this trans out. I just need to remove all these bolts to the bell housing, remove these 4 to the mounting, and these 2 for the shifter, and then we can take the trans out. All right, so before you remove the bolts to the transmission mount, you're gonna want to head and get your transmission jack and secure your transmission, and then you want to get a pole jack to level out your engine and therefore slide your trans out easy. So I have the trans out, so you can see it's very dark. There it is. So I have the trans out. This is an aftermarket clutch fork. I'm going to keep this bearing because I put this in not too long ago, so that bearing's still good. This is the old clutch. I put this in. This is also from ACT. As you can see, I put this in probably about 2 years ago, 1 year ago. I don't remember. It's been a while though, so this clutch has been here for a minute. Right now, I'm just gonna put the clutch alignment tool in, and then we're gonna remove these bolts and check out the clutch, see what kind of damage I've done. Check out these hot spots on the pressure plate. This is the clutch disc. It doesn't look too worn, still has life left. Check out the hot spots on the flywheel. It's pretty bad too, like right here. Yeah, this kit definitely took some damage, but that's all good because we will be putting a new one in. I'm going to save this kit because it's still pretty good, just in case I need it in the future. You never know. Yep, so we have everything out: the flywheel, the clutch, and the pressure plate. If you were doing a job, you know, this job, do not remove this plate. If you do, make sure the teeth go towards the engine block and you line up these, because if you put this backwards, this sensor will not sense this and your car will not start. And then you're gonna have to drop everything back down again. I've learned that the hard way. So be mindful, make sure the teeth point towards the engine block, make sure these are aligned, and yeah, because you definitely don't want to be doing this again. Right now I'm going to clean everything. I have some brake clean and some air. I'm over here, guys. I'm going to show y'all something that I found. If you look at this input shaft bearing, it's grooved right here. I don't think it's supposed to be like that. It looks like there is a heat ring on it from the throwout bearing. I think I probably put too much lube on it. It got heated up and caused this groove, because the throwout bearing basically spins right here. So I will be replacing this. I'll find out where I can get this part and I will be replacing it, because that's not good. We don't want these grooves here. I took out my clutch fork and bearing. I will be cleaning those and re-greasing them. Make sure do not lose these clips. You need those. Booklet, it tells you the torque specs for everything and how tight everything needs to be. You get some stickers. Keep this handy. New flywheel, new clutch, new throw bearing, and new clutch alignment. I won't be using those. First, start with the throw bearing. So you can see it looks kind of shiny. It has like oil on it. They've put that on to prevent this new product from rusting. So you're gonna have to spray this down with some brake clean. Let's do that. Alright guys, so I have the flywheel in. I cleaned all the oily stuff off with some brake clean, sprayed it, and I put some air to it, dried it. I hand threaded all these bolts in, and then I went and zapped them just a little bit, just one zap, just like one click, you know, whatever. And then I'm gonna go ahead and torque these right now. All right, so guys, so we have it set to 65 foot-pounds. I can go ahead and torque them. I'll show y'all how I'm gonna torque this. So I have a wrench on this stud and on that little alignment pole, that little alignment thingy for the pressure plate. I have this on that so it can stay still while I'm torquing. If not, it's gonna, this whole disc is gonna rotate. So that's what I did to keep it still while I torque all these bolts down to spec. Alright, that's nice and torqued. They provided us with lube for the input shaft. Let's compare. And of course, this one's a lot cleaner. Yeah, this one, you can tell this one's been unevenly worn. Got the new clutch in there. The alignment tool is holding in place, but when we actually put the pressure plate on and adjust it, just is gonna come up just a little bit. So you can see just that little bit, because right now the clutch disc is kind of weighing that alignment tool down. So once we put the pressure plate on, we're gonna align that nicely and then tighten down the pressure plate. Before we put this on, we're gonna clean the mounting surface with some brake clean. All right, so we mainly just sprayed this. This is where the clutch is going to be touching. And we also sprayed this because this is where the throttle bearing is going to be touching. All right, guys, so you can see we have the pressure plate on. I have all the bolts on. Remember to hand tighten these all the way down with your hand first. Never just fucking zap them in. It's stupid. But yeah, once you got those bolts in, this is where you want to align your clutch. You want it to be as centered as possible. Once you're happy with that, go ahead and tighten down all the bolts. You want to make sure that that is centered. Mine's just a little bit off. That's the main thing. You just want the input shaft to be able to slide in very easily. All right, I think I got it pretty centered now. I say I got it pretty centered. All right, and when you're happy with that, just go ahead and zap all these bolts, and then we're gonna go ahead and torque them. Yep, so I have the bolts zapped on. Make sure the clutch is aligned properly. I believe I have it pretty even. See, once you have it tightened down, you won't be able to move this anymore. Just make sure this can slide in good. And then we're just gonna go ahead and torque all of these now. I have my torque wrench on a 22 to hold that the crank pulley in place while I torque these, that way I can torque these down. All right, now that everything's torqued, flywheel is torqued, pressure plate's torqued, clutch is aligned. It's looking good. Now all I need to do is grease this input shaft, re-grease the throttle bearing and fork, put those back on, and then we can put the trans back in, fill it up with oil, and put everything back. All right, guys, so I have the fork back in as well as the new bearing on the clips. I've used the supplied input shaft grease by ACT. You'll only apply a little bit, like very, very light, to the input shaft where the bearing's gonna be and to this spline right here. And I put high temp grease on the pivot point for the clutch fork, and as well right behind where the bearing contacts the clutch fork. Put some high temp grease on that. So this is ready. Everything is torqued on here. We are ready to put the trans back in and put everything else back on as well that we removed. So I'm gonna go ahead and do that. So I ran into a little issue. The trans being a bitch going back in. This is why it's very important to line this up correctly. I didn't line it up correctly. There we go. Okay. Okay, I finally got it in. See how flush it is? All we need to put is the bolts in. We had to get these lined up. We got these through. It was just such a bitch to get relined. But we got it. Just gotta put the bolts in. See, it's flush on both sides. Gotta put the bolts in. Mount this up. It's gonna be good, guys. Ooh. Alright guys, as you can see, I have all the 4 bolts for the transmission mount in. I have these 2 bolts in for the shifter mount. I fucking stripped these bolts, so these are tight. I have them like set to a tight point. If not, they would just fucking spin in place. Whoops. Besides that, I have all these bolts to the bell housing hand tight. I have the starter back in. All those bolts are hand tight. I just need to torque these, torque all of these, except for those 2. Those are gonna be like that. I have to torque all of these, and then I can start putting the drive shaft back as well. We'll put that back on last. So yeah, I'm just go ahead and torque all these bolts, torque the bolts to the bell housing, torque the bolts to the transmission mount, and I can also put that drive shaft back in. All right guys, so I went ahead, got all these bell housing bolts torqued. I have the transmission mount bolts torqued. Now I'm just gonna go ahead and fill the trans up with oil. So I finally got done filling it. You basically want to fill it to the point to where it starts to come out the fill hole. As you can see right now, it's a steady drip. So that's good. We can go ahead and put the plug back on. Now our transmission has oil. I just need to tighten that filler plug to spec. And I can put that propeller shaft back on. Alright guys, everything's looking good. Bell housing bolts are torqued. Transmission is filled with oil. Mount and trans mount bolts are tight or torqued. Propeller shaft or drive shaft mount are tight. Drive shaft to differential, those bolts are tight. Everything's looking good. Just have to put the front pipe back on and put everything else back on, put the wheels back on, just start cleaning up. Okay, now I got everything buttoned over front. Negative battery terminal is connected. Starter positive. Starter is secure. I have the wires to the starter good. Connectors here good. Strong ground battery. That ground is good. Slave cylinder is good. I added oil, tightened the filter. Everything is good under the hood. Up in here, I already put the shifter in, or the shift linkage. You just slide this arm back into this shifter, and then you have a washer and a pin that's secured in place. And then you have your plate here. That plate is for the reverse lock. I suggest that when you put this plate in, that you put the plate on, put the bolts hand tight, and then you want to basically push this against this and put it in first gear, and then make your adjustments. You see I have that little tiny gap right there? That's how I like mine. That way, you know, I can put it into first and second very smoothly, and it goes into reverse. So that's what I like to do. But yeah, I'm just buttoning everything up, and then we're gonna get her started. guys, so I have everything buttoned up in the car now. See, I have a shifter and everything in there. Back. Now I'm just gonna go for a test drive and see how it feels. This clutch feels very light. You didn't even feel that biting point. That's a very light clutch. I think it's the flywheel. They gave me a light flywheel by accident. I ordered a normal one, but they gave me a light one. Fuck it, let's go for a test drive, see how it feels. So guys, hope y'all been good. Hope y'all been having a good day and everything. I just want to say thank you for watching this video. If you stay to the end, you're a real one. Shout out to you. God bless all of y'all, man. Hope y'all have a good day. Thanks for watching, man. Stay tuned.